working with you actually made sure that we didn't die as a business. Like we got the funding we needed. And on top of that, I had a ton of replies and a ton of meetings. It is a life science company, and the easiest way to think about it is that we are automating microscopy and essentially changing the paradigm around how microscopy is being viewed and how it's being used. My role is I'm a co-founder and the CEO of the business, and I have full responsibility for the commercialization of the business. And we are a team of 4 co-founders, and the other 3 co-founders are researchers and scientists, and they all have PhDs and know their way around a microscope, and that's just not my forte. In the space of raising funding for early stage companies, it has been probably the hardest in 15 years to raise funding. This is not my first time raising funding, and so I have some perspective to it. I can see that it was way more difficult this time around than the last time I did it, which was a few years ago. And it's probably important to think about that basically typical investors today that would otherwise normally invest in pre-seed companies happily, they have had other, let's say, financial vehicles that have given great returns at very low risk. So that's what we've been competing against. It's been very, very hard. And like from my perspective, almost no one got funding last year. And spoiler, I mean, we made it. So that's really, really good. And thanks to you guys. So very happy about that. But what we were doing before was just the typical hard work that founders need to do. So they need to basically park business as usual and then go out and just do funding, like fundraising. That's the number one thing to do. You need to find investors. You need to cultivate the relationships. There's a sort of an invisible workload from the outside that happens when you have conversations with investors and you get feedback on your case. You also want to update your case. And that's a very natural part of the fundraising process. So I had to do I had to find all of the contact, I had to do the research, I had to send the emails, I had to manage the agendas, I had to make sure they showed up on the call, then I had to do the actual call. That's next to all of the other things that I already have to do as a founder. So fundraising is basically you're adding 100% more work and the business still needs to be run. So yeah, it's not many ways around it. I mean, ultimately, it was a luxury to just get meetings booked into my agenda. And so I didn't have to do any of the contact research or the reaching out or nurturing those threads. I just jumped into meetings that were booked into my agenda. So I saved a huge amount of time on that. And furthermore, the conversations that I had were on point. They were qualified. And at the end of this, we had 2 term sheets, which is considering how hard it was 2023 and beginning of 2024, that's an incredible outcome. I mean, I didn't have to manage the agenda. I just had to show up on the calls and make sure that I blocked out time in my agenda for being able to eat. The process is always, you have to get to know them. And there's always like 30 to 45 minutes of just presenting your case and getting to know them and getting to know each other. The conversations went very well. Like this is something that we've done before, and none of them were like completely disqualified. And the nature of this process is that you're going to have to meet, let's say, 30 to 50 investors before you find the right match. But that doesn't have to do with like your qualification on your side. That is just how this process works. I would say the surprising part was how fast you actually started generating meetings. So that already happened within, I think, 2 weeks or so. And I was expecting that to take much longer. So that was very nice to see, of course. I already alluded to it, and working with you actually made sure that we didn't die as a business. Like we got the funding we needed. And on top of that, I had a ton of replies and a ton of meetings where they just said that we're really interested in your idea. It's just too early for us. And so I have multiple contacts to go to in the next rounds. They already know us, and it'll be a warm conversation to open. That's a huge value, and particularly because I didn't have to do anything to get to that point, right? So that's tremendous result. Well, I'm not going to recommend you when I need your services, but apart from that period, I would 10 of 10 recommend you to anyone trying to raise funding. Yeah, so that's a good question. So skepticism, I would say, of course, I hadn't done it before, so I didn't really know what to expect. And I was positively surprised to see that the conversations that we were having were, even if they didn't go to a second stage, they were useful in the sense that I learned something from them. Like we could move our case forward, make it better, or find someone who would be interested at a later stage. I didn't expect those parts, so that was surprising, but in a good way. And I think in general, I'm quite skeptical to outsourcing anything like this. So I'm happy to see that it worked, see that my gut feeling in this case was right. So that's what I would share on that point.